Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, January 30th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game is in 212 days. The game against Michigan in 303 days. If you are planning your next event, you should make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. And also make sure you check them out at Standardized Brewing in Lewis Center this Sunday from 11 to 8. You go there, make sure you tell them Tom and Tony sent you. So Tom and Tony are here today. Third person thing. I don't like that. Sorry, that's on me. We are here talking about the Buckeyes who have left via the transfer portal this year. Today we're going to be talking just about the guys on offense. This is a little bit of like an almanac show almost, where it's like you can sort of refer back to this, where it's like, whatever happened to this guy? Like, well, we'll tell you where he went. Kind of just some general thoughts on where he went, and you can kind of maybe wrap up on where this all leaves Ohio State after the year. And welcoming in Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Tony, we're just focusing on the offense today, and we're just going to do this position group by position group. This is a little bit of a check-in because a lot of this happened while people were focused on Ohio State actually making a run to the national championship. Now the transfer portal window is closed, so this list is kind of locked. Almost everyone has found a new home already, so we're going to take a run through this. We're going to start with the quarterback room. Two guys who transferred out from Ohio State, Devin Brown and Aaron Noland. Both of them landed in Power 4 conference schools. Devin Brown at Cal, Aaron Noland at South Carolina.
Yeah, and Devin Brown landing in a place where he's going to have an opportunity to compete to start because Cal is losing their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, to, I believe, Indiana. So that job is wide open for the taking, and he'll go in there and be one of the more experienced guys in that room, because there's not a lot of experience in that room. So he will have an opportunity to finally get to play and show everybody why he was a top prospect way back when. The Aaron Noland thing, I think, is interesting because of the play of South Carolina quarterback Lenoris Sellers, who's a redshirt freshman. And so, like, he was some would say the offensive freshman of the year nationally in college football, the same college football that Jeremiah Smith plays in. But now you got a true freshman transferring to a place where a redshirt freshman has been starting, and like Lenoris Sellers, does Aaron Noland see Sellers leaving in 2 years for the NFL, and then he can start for a couple of years because it's closer to home for the Georgia kid, but you've now landed at a spot where there's an established starter for probably 2 more years. And so what does that mean for him?
Well, and if you are one snap away from being the starter, maybe that's not such a bad thing, because he was probably not going to be one snap away from being the starter if he stayed at Ohio State. And also you take 1 year this year to figure out, okay, learn the system, all that kind of stuff. There's not a ton of pressure to be a starter immediately. But also, how confident are you that any second year starting quarterback at a not elite school is going to be there the third year? That's kind of, everyone knows how much eligibility everyone has left. That has almost no bearing on their likelihood to be at a school in 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I don't know that there's a clear path. And I don't know, coming in as a second year player who did not get a ton of run. He was really fifth string at Ohio State last year. So you really are not getting a ton of snaps during practice during the season. So, he may be a little bit behind where you would sort of hope to be after a full year in college. So you may have a little bit of a ramp up time at South Carolina. But either way, that's landed an SEC school and is probably one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the depth chart. That is probably not a bad spot for him. Next up to the running back room, and only one transfer out there for the Buckeyes, and that was Sam Williams Dixon, who was the 4th string running back this year, played just a couple games, only got 5 or 6 touches, something like that. And he headed out the door immediately when the Buckeyes brought in 3 freshman running backs in this year's recruiting class, plus C.J. Donaldson from West Virginia. No word yet on where Sam Williams Dixon is headed. He's kind of the last remaining guy who we have kind of a question mark on. He's someone who I feel like is probably going to find a home at a step down kind of school, whether that's a Cincinnati or somewhere in the MAC or somewhere like that. He feels like he could be really, really dynamic, but the path of the playing field at Ohio State was not going to work for him probably in the short to medium term.
Yeah, clearly that's how he felt. And you do wonder, does he take the Evan Pryor route to Cincinnati, or Chip Trainum went to Kentucky before going to Toledo. So is that the level we're talking about? Is he shooting for something higher? Because we don't often see a lateral move for guys leaving Ohio State to go to another like top 5, top 10 program. And I don't know that I'm expecting that here as well. It is interesting that he hasn't found a place yet, but you assume it'll be somewhere in the Midwest based on him being an Ohio kid, but we will see. I look forward to watching him, just like we did with Evan Pryor, to see these guys that are talented get an opportunity to play somewhere, anywhere really. And that's the case for Sam Williams Dixon. We'll see where he ends up and what he can do for an offense.
And Evan Pryor, just in case you were not following Cincinnati this year, 56 carries, 418 yards, 7.5 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns, and then also 15 catches for 181 yards. So basically 600 yards of total offense, 7 touchdowns. And that's not starter stats, but that's a substantial step up for him. And you would figure that Sam Williams Dixon might be able to do something similar to that next year. Wherever he ends up. Couple transfers out from the wide receiver room, Jaden Ballard and Kojo Antwi. Ballard did not stay with Ohio State for their playoff run. Antwi did. Ballard is headed to Wisconsin. Antwi headed to Colorado State. And, those are two more guys where they just never quite got on the field with any consistency at Ohio State. Both of those guys, skill-wise, certainly intriguing. We talked for years about Jaden Ballard. If Jaden Ballard can just get it together, boy, he could present a really exciting downfield threat, and it just kind of never happened at Ohio State. It's going to be a different offense at Wisconsin this year. Phil Longo is gone. I know they've transferred their quarterbacks out and in once again. I cannot for the life of me remember who is their quarterback now this year, but it's going to be a new Wisconsin offense in a year when Luke Fickell would be well advised to win some football games and score some points. So, that seems like an exciting opportunity for Ballard. And then Antwi and Colorado State, again, that's a program that's kind of moving its way up in the Mountain West, and that whole area of the country is sort of shifting around a little bit right now in terms of conference alignment and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I was frantically scrolling as well. It's Billy Edwards who is going to be the Wisconsin quarterback, because they lost at least 2 quarterbacks to the portal, including returning starter Braden Locke and injured starter Tyler Van Dyke, and then another guy. So they're scrambling. But again, Jaden Ballard's another guy. Let's see what he can do with 50 reps a game or 50 snaps a game, and see if he can be more than the I just run straight down the field, that sort of thing. I mean, he was ranked higher as a recruit than Marvin Harrison Jr., so let's see what that can be. And then with Kojo Antwi, I was like, what is this with Colorado State? So I'm like, well, I wonder who Colorado State's wide receivers coach is. Maybe there's a connection. And their wide receiver coach, I believe, left for USC. So, you choose a school, and I guess they'll throw it around. But it is interesting to watch a Georgia prospect go all the way to Colorado State, and he's not the only prospect that has gone west in this group that we're going to talk about. But again, the thing about Kojo Antwi, never played. All of his receivers loved him. Like, they all spoke very highly of him about his leadership and just the support that he provided. But another guy, the last guy of the 2022 receiver class at Ohio State, that produced all of about 3 catches, I think, in their combined OSU history.
Yeah, and the fact that he was staying around for the whole championship run, there were a lot of guys who did not do that. So the fact that he did, that told you a lot about what his teammates and the coaching staff thought about him as a player and a person. So, certainly best of luck to him with the Rams. 3 offensive linemen hit the portal for the Buckeyes. All 3 have played tackle at various times. Zen Mahalski actually started at tackle for 1 game and then got hurt and then never really got back on the field. He's headed to Indiana. George Fitzpatrick, he's headed a little further west. He's headed to Kansas State. He, of course, a Colorado native, so that's a little closer to home for him. And then Miles Walker, a Connecticut native, headed, of course, very close to Greenwich, Connecticut. Boise State gets to play in the blue turf. All 3 guys headed west. All 3 guys headed to programs where there's a decent possibility that at least a couple of those guys, maybe all 3 of those guys, earn starting roles. And those are 3 programs. Indiana made the college football playoff this year. K-State won the Big 12 championship just a couple of years ago, and Boise State made the college football playoff this year. So these are 3 programs that are certainly it's a step down from Ohio State, but this is, these are three programs where you could be seeing these guys playing in some somewhat consequential games next year.
Yeah, I think these are all good moves and good opportunities. And I think, for one, it was just good to see guys who are close to playing, but not close enough, now go find spots where you would think Zen Michalski, as you said, goes back to his home state. And he had interest from several programs. So now he's going to have an opportunity to, I say opportunity, he's also going to have the pressure to win a job. Like when you are brought in from Ohio State, guess what? Now you're a starter. Like that's what you're being viewed as from the outside, maybe from the coaches, from the fan base, depending on how big the fan base is. Tom, we remember the Tyreek Johnson transferring to Nebraska, former 5-star, and Nebraska fans are all excited. It's like they didn't understand that he never played at Ohio State. They only understood Ohio State, former 5-star commit. And it's more involved than that. And Zen Michalski has played, so he's got some experience. He's going to have an opportunity. George Fitzpatrick has been close. He's been in the too deep at times. And maybe I think you talk to people, they feel good about the potential there, but he was still just young. And so at Kansas State, maybe he can step in there and be a guy. And I don't know what they're replacing or what they need, but I think he's going to compete for a spot. And Miles Walker, I thought, to me, you heard nothing about him at his time at Ohio State. So to me, it's just good to see that he wants to keep playing. And it's going to a place that you can't really hide. And why would you go all the way out from Connecticut to Boise State to hide? So that's interesting to me as well, that there is a desire there, because at Ohio State, if you're not heard from or seen in practices, if you're not running out there in the top 3 lines, then it's like, well, there's something, there's an issue there. And sometimes maybe it's numbers, but generally, if you're not running in the top 3 at really any point, then one, you're never going to play at Ohio State. 2, maybe college football isn't for you. So just the fact that a lot of these guys will enter the portal just to quit. Like this is like, I'm not planning on going anywhere. I'm just going to enter the portal. We'll see what happens. And then to end up at a major place like Boise State, I think that's a good sign for him. I'll be looking forward to seeing what he can do there, and hopefully he can earn a spot and continue playing.
Yeah, it felt like he got hurt. He hurt his, I think, shoulder his freshman year, and it felt like that really set him back, and he never quite got back on track after that. So hopefully you get a fresh start at a spot like Boise State. You can be a contributor and, potentially be someone who you see in the college football playoffs in the future. But certainly, best of luck to all 3 of those guys. And also, the last guy I wanted to talk about is tight end Patrick Gerd, who was certainly a role player at Ohio State, had a former walk-on, but someone who played some pretty consequential plays. You saw him at the end of the that last drive. I think it was the play right before the bomb to Jeremiah Smith in the national championship game. They brought him in as a lead blocker, and they talked on the broadcast about the fact that, well, he hasn't carried the ball all year, so this is a little bit of a tip-off. This is going to be a quarterback run. And, but if you're playing in one of the most consequential drives of the entire season, like that's someone who is a valued member of that team. He's headed to Cincinnati. He's got a chance to potentially take on a little bit of a bigger role there, maybe be not just a role player, but a full-time player there. And he follows in the footsteps of Joe Royer, who did the same thing as a tight end, a little bit of a different tight end for Ohio State. But he went down there a year ago and then had 50 catches, 521 yards, and 3 touchdowns this year for the Bearcats. So, this seems like a great opportunity for Patrick Gerd in his final season to maybe get to be an every down or close to every down player for the Bearcats.
Yeah, I think he's a very complimentary tight end and 12 personnel package with Royer, who is coming back for his senior season. So you got a established guy like Royer, 50 catches, as you said, and a guy like Patrick Gerd, who can be that blocker, that can play fullback, can play tight end, can do a lot of different things, and is a reliable guy, a smart guy, and a guy that everybody likes and can be trusted, and has worked his way up. So I think, yeah, you hate to see guys leave like that, but you're excited for the opportunities that they can get. Same with Joe Royer. Like he's one of those guys that has benefited from leaving and benefited from playing time. He's making the most of it. So I think this will be a nice little marriage between the 2 of them in that Cincinnati offense as they fluctuate from 11 to 12 personnel, because Patrick Gerd's the one, like almost a perfect complement to a tight end like Joe Royer.
Well, and I think this is a great example of the transfer portal sort of working for everyone, where Joe Royer and Patrick Gerd get to go play somewhere where they're going to get a lot more snaps. And Ohio State in the portal brings in Will Kazmarek a year ago, who turns into one of these really impactful tight ends, especially as a blocker, and then brings in Max Clare this year, who leaves Purdue and is potentially going to be tight end number 1 for Ohio State this upcoming season. So definitely, sort of a mutually beneficial thing in a couple different ways. One big takeaway, though, for me, Tony, as we wrap this up is you run down this list of schools, and it's Cal, South Carolina, Wisconsin, Colorado State, Indiana, Kansas State, Boise State, Cincinnati. None of these guys are people who, we'll get to one. There's one on the defensive side of the ball that we'll get to the next time we do the defense, but none of these guys are at schools where you're looking at this and going, oh boy, this is someone who Ohio State's going to be, facing in a college football playoff semifinal game next year or anything like that. This, guys are in good spots for them to be able to continue their future. But this is also not, oh boy, Ohio State lost these completely irreplaceable, incredibly crucial pieces of the team. This feels like a lot of mutually beneficial separations more than anything else.
Yeah, completely agree. This is one where, wish him well on the way out for most of these guys. And even like Patrick Gerd, who they'd love to have back, they've got a bunch of tight ends. So, how much of your roster can be tight ends? And it can't be 12% of your roster, basically. So, you've got to wish them well and let them be on their way. And in terms of like the lack of lateral moves, like how far back do you have to go for an offensive lateral move that you're like, well, we're going to see him in the playoffs? Is it Quinn Ewers, Jameson Williams, that sort of thing, where it doesn't often happen where somebody goes to a place that is commensurate and then you're like, now you got to face them again. And so we may be talking about that on the defensive side in the next show, but offensively, I think they're going to be okay given these losses. Let's see what it looks like in the spring, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there may be, the portal will open up again after spring ball, and undoubtedly some more folks will go in there, and we'll probably have another one of these shows at that point. But just wanted to kind of get you guys updated on this. It feels like there's a lot of stuff that's, sort of while you were busy watching the college football playoff, here's all the other stuff that happened. I've been looking at other, sports or other college football beat folks and the stories they're covering, and they're at the Senior Bowl and stuff right now. It's like, why are you at the Senior Bowl? The season only ended like 6 days ago. How is this possible? But yeah, it is. Other teams are a little deeper into the off season than Ohio State is. So going to try and get you caught up on what you may have missed on a couple of these shows and get you caught up on all the other stuff happening with the Buckeyes at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also some stuff happening with the Michigan Wolverines. We've done a bunch on that this week as well. But there's plenty to talk about there on the Huddle Board, presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope to see you there, and we hope to see you at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Got lots of coverage of the team, recruiting, transfer portal news, and much more, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.